Hi, I'm Will Adams, and this is Honey Brook Tools and Woodworks. This is the fifth in a series of videos that I'm doing where I introduce you to all the tools that I make here at Honey Brook Tools and give you a little bit of a behind-the-scenes look into the process of making them. Today's video is going to be focused on the Honey Brook Marking Gauge. I'll go into more detail when I go into each of the steps, but you may be familiar with the shape of this fence. It's patterned after a vintage, I think it's a Stanley marking gauge that I have. What I like about this is it's got a nice reference surface, and it's got a circular cutter, which I find to be more accurate, provides a crisper line that you can work to, rather than the pins that you would find on a vintage marking gauge. Today I'm going to be making some in cherry. I've done some of the prep work already. I've cut this blank out. This will be, obviously, I think this will make up to 5 of the marking gauges. And I've cut the brass wear strips that will go into the fences on these. So I'm going to readjust the camera a little bit. I'm going to smooth these surfaces and then get started. So this blank is all squared up and ready to go. The next step will be to cut the rebates, or I guess the grooves that will receive these wear plates. And before I do that, I'm just going to lay out each one of the marking gauges using this template that I've made. I've marked. This is the 2 reference surfaces. So this will be the surface where the wear plates will be inserted, and these are the 2 reference surfaces. So when I cut the grooves in, I know that this is square. So this is pretty straightforward. Now, if you look at my template, I've marked it up so that I have a center line that I can also transfer onto the blank. This center line up here will mark the center of where this screw that tightens down the beam. That marks that center line. So I should have done this all at once, but okay. So now I've done my layout. Actually, no, I have not. There's one other step that I need to do, and that is to lay out the center of each one of these blanks. So that will be the hole that the beam goes through. So I just do that. I just take this little 6-inch rule and go from corner to corner to find center. You may wonder why I'm using a pencil right now. These are just my rough layouts. When it comes time to cut these holes, I will mark them with a marking knife, just so I've got a nice clear reference. But this helps by putting these lines on here. It just helps to keep my brain right, knowing which way the blank is oriented. So I'm gonna head over to the table saw, reset the camera, and I'll be right back. Okay, so we're over at the table saw. I have already set up a dado stack in the table saw to cut the grooves for the brass wear plates. You could do this on a router table, I'm sure. I don't have a router table. I don't have a lot of use for one, so I can't justify the cost. So I choose to use a dado stack. And when I do it, I always run a test in the same species that I'm using for the marking gauges to make sure that the groove isn't too tight or too loose. If it's too tight, when you hammer it home, sometimes you'll blow out the end of the marking gauge, so you don't want that. And you don't want it to be too loose, because then you're going to have an unsightly seam of epoxy in your gauge. So I've tested that. It's important to test it on the same species, because when you insert the wear strips, if they should be not tight, but they should be, it should take a little bit of effort to get them in. And each species of wood has a different compression to it. So if I were to test this on pine, it would go in much easier than on cherry. So we're all set up here. I've got the fence set, and turn on the dust extractor and we'll get going. Okay, so these are actually a little bit, for some reason they're a little bit tighter than my test. I don't know what that's about. So I'm going to need to adjust this dado stack, put a little spacer in it to remedy this. I could do it by hand, but it's a little bit tedious. So I'm going to do that, and then we'll head back to the bench. Okay, so we're back at the bench. I have drilled the hole for the beam and the brass insert that the screw will go in. I couldn't get the camera set up in a way that was going to show you what I was doing. It's not rocket science. It's basically two holes that are countersunk. So now the next step is, excuse me, to put in this brass insert. Now these can be a little bit tricky. Cherry is pretty forgiving in that it's not terribly dense, so it's pretty easy to start. But on some other woods that I've used, like ebony, even boxwood, if you get them started crooked, they're going to stay crooked. So anyway, the brass insert has this little, I don't know what you'd call that, but a little slot for screwing it in with a screwdriver. I don't want that to show, so I turn it upside down. And so this hole it's been bored to accept the brass screw that's going to go down and this brass insert. So what I do is I've got this hex nut that I thread, whoops, I did that backwards. I've got this hex screw that I thread the brass insert onto, and it's long enough that when I put it into this hole, the hex screw is going to serve as a guide to keep it going straight. Now again, the most important part is getting it started straight. So I just eyeball it, and you'll probably hear me say eyeball it a lot, and the reason that I say that is the more you use your eye, the better your eye gets. So just look at it and see if it looks like it's on there straight. And to my eye, looking at it from a couple different angles and sides, it looks good to me. So I just go ahead slowly at first. And I keep checking to make sure that it's where I want it to be. And it is. So then I just drive it home. And I drive it far enough that this, that last nut will drive that brass insert down in below the surface of the marking gauge. I don't want it to be flush because eventually I'm going to plane this to get a nice surface on it. And there you have it. So the next step will be to insert these brass wear strips. And that is also pretty straightforward. I just need to mix up some ebony, some epoxy, and then I'll insert these, and I'll let the epoxy cure overnight, and then I'll come back tomorrow and finish these up. So let me grab some epoxy, get that started, and I will be right back. Okay, as I'm getting ready to install these brass wear strips, I notice that these grooves, there are some steps from the dado blade, so they're not completely flat on the bottom. And if I don't address that, there'll be kind of an unsightly step that you don't want to see. It just, it wouldn't look right. So I've got this little Lie-Nielsen, they're small router plane, and I just come in here and might be a little bit too deep. There we go. Come at it here. There we go. Perfect tool for this. Could use a chisel if you wanted. Oops. Right. Okay. So now, before I install these, I wipe down the brass with some acetone just in case there's anything on there that could inhibit them from adhering to the wood. I have no idea if that's necessary, but it just kind of makes me feel better. So, again, this is just 5-minute epoxy that I use. So let's see. That mixed up. Okay, that doesn't want to go down for some reason, so we're going to go into the vise. I just use another one of these brass inserts as a little bit of an influencer for this one. Try to convince it to go where it needs to go. There we go. Oops. Just took a little bit of convincing. This one might need some too. There you have it. Now, I don't know if you can see that there's a step here. This isn't flush. And that's okay, because what I will do to ensure that this surface is true and square to this, and also to polish up the brass, I put these through the drum sander, so that will clear this up. As I've said before, I like to use hand tools as much as I can, but sometimes, you know, the machine is the right tool. So that's where we are today. So these will be left to cure overnight. The next step will be to shape the ends of each of these, and then to put this, as I just said, through the drum sander to clean up this surface. And then a couple other things. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please click the like button. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below in the comment section. Thanks for watching.